to the Are We Nearly There Yet podcast. I'm Sonia, wife to James and mum to 4 children. I'm also the families lead at Kerith Community Church. In each episode, I'm going to be having a conversation with someone relating to this journey we're on in parenting and family life. If you're looking for expert parenting advice, well, you've come to the wrong place. But I do hope this will be a place to share, to find affirmation, a place that may challenge our thinking, open our eyes to other people's situations, and ultimately help us realise we're not alone in this journey of parenting. Perhaps you're just starting out, or perhaps your children are nearly adults. Whatever your situation, you are all welcome to join us in the conversation. This week, I sat down and chatted to Callum, husband to Debs and father of 2 young children, about being a hands-on dad. Why don't you grab a drink, sit down and listen to our conversation. Welcome, Callum, to the Are We Nearly There Yet podcast. How are you, Callum?
I'm really good, Sonia. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
On the podcast. We would love to know who you are. Some of our listeners may not know who you are. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Who are your family? And who were your family when you were growing up as well?
Okay, yeah. My name's Callum and I'm married to Debs, and we have been going to Kerith since 2013. Before then, I lived in Woking, so I grew up with my parents in Woking with an older brother and sister. So I'm the youngest of 3. And then when we got married, we moved to Bracknell because it was equidistant between our 2 jobs at the time. And we found somewhere to live in Bracknell and then found the local church. Went to Kerith and been going ever since. Originally was at the Bracknell site and we now go to the BV site. We've been married for 7 years. It's quite a funny story about how we met, which I'll tell you quickly.
Yeah, go for it.
Some people find it interesting. So there's actually baby pictures of me and Debs together. Very embarrassing, mainly for her because she's older. But growing up in Woking is where Debs' parents were also from. So actually, my mum and her mum were best friends and still are. So there was pictures of us growing up. She's 2 years older than me. And then when she was about 3 or 4, they moved up north to Southport near Liverpool, and still live there till up till today. So I didn't really see Debs from the age of, I don't know, like 1 till, she must have been about 19 or 20. She started going to university in London, ended up meeting someone who was from my home church. So then came over one week to see my mum because they were still in contact. And then, we saw each other for the first time in, those like 17 years. And then went on a date about a couple of weeks later, then started dating properly. We're dating for about 3 years probably. And then got married. So there's a long history. And I guess the good thing is that I'd never had to do that awkward in-law thing because actually my father and mother-in-law know me inside out. I've heard all the horror stories. I've heard all the trouble I caused growing up. So I haven't had to go through that awkwardness. It's the running joke that it was all a big ploy from our mothers to eventually get us to end up together.
Well, that's what I was about to say. I know that a lot of my girlfriends and I, we are really praying in and getting married to each other one day because it just would make so much sense for like Boxing Day and family celebrations.
Yeah, do you know, it's had a lot of advantages. It's not had many disadvantages. So then we've also got 2 children. So we had Phyllis in April 2017. So she's 3 and a bit now. And then we had Jesse last October. So he is 8 months.
And they're both very cute.
I think so. Thank you for agreeing. we think we're going to keep them. So
that's good. Yeah. They are very, very cute children. So Callum, tell us a little bit about any work you do outside of the home as well, or any other interests you have other than being a husband and a dad.
Yep. So a bit about work, I guess. So I've worked in the live events industry for 8 or 9 years. So worked for a big live events company and then actually worked for Sky Sports for a while in their studios, and then started working for Kerith in late 2016. So 3.5 years. So I love all the techie stuff. Outside of that, this year I've got really into cooking. So I'm doing loads of cooking at home. I am a big barbecue lover. So love all things barbecue through the summer. And then the new addition to the family is I've just got a pizza oven. So I'm
Mhm.
now beginning to master the art of dough and dough hydration percentages and very nerdy stuff like that. So that's the latest fad I'm getting myself stuck into.
So you definitely bring your tech edge to your culinary skills. I've seen on your Instagram stories how seriously you took your barbecuing.
Yeah, we've got like the Bluetooth thermometer
Yeah.
and all those things. Yeah, we trying to bring the harmony of food and technology together.
So it must have been strange moving from Sky Sports, did you say, to Kerith? Bit of a change of environment.
Yeah, it was a change, although like it's a real pivotal time that I remember where God led me from one thing to another. So a very brief story is I was working for a great company doing live event stuff, but was mentally quite struggling with that, probably due to lots of like working away, very long hours, long consecutive days working, as what the live events industry is. And then I took a break from that to work for Sky, which actually ended up being a bit of a pause, a bit of time to recuperate because it was kind of shift based, and to be honest it was quite mundane. You were just a small cog in a big operation, and then it kind of, the timing was all perfect. A role at Kerith was just opening up to lead production, and yeah, very much felt that God had prepared me for all of that, had given me this little break, and launched me into the job at Kerith. It all kind of came together so perfectly. So yeah, definitely God had his hand in all of that.
Yeah, and you're usually somebody who's kind of behind the camera or maybe doing not so much upfront stuff, like in the boiler room, kind of like Kerith Live, everything that's going out online at the moment. You're
Yeah, I'm more used to like I guess the analogy would be like paddling away under the water, trying to keep things afloat. So trying to keep live streams on air and yeah, all those type of things. I'm happy in black, working behind the scenes, making things look seamless to everyone else.
well, we're glad that you've come out from behind the scenes just to come and join for us for this conversation. Thank you. How do you describe yourself or define yourself as a dad? Been a dad, what, 3.5 years, did you say?
Yep, 3.5 years.
How would you describe yourself as a dad?
I would say very, very hands-on. I remember really early on feeling, I guess after we'd had Fliss, I guess not that it was ever said verbally, but it was kind of this like, I felt like this unwritten rule that it was, Fliss was kind of Deb's responsibility, and I was just here as the dad, and people would joke that dad can't really do anything because it's all the mum in those early days, and that it never sat right with me at all.
Mm,
Like I never felt comfortable with Deb's having to shoulder the responsibility or the sleep deprivation or any of that. So just straight away, I really like felt there was no other way than to get involved and to be like changing the nappies and getting up in the night, and it just felt like the most natural thing. And so I guess I've just always carried that on. So yeah, very hands-on. I like to think I try and prioritize fun above most other things. We love going on adventures and days out, and Fliss is obviously a bit older than Jessie. She's 3.5, so it's like full communication, all those type of stuff. And sometimes we're out together, it's just like being out with my best buddy. I really feel like it's that kind of relationship.
oh,
We just love going on little adventures together, and with Jessie now as well. But yeah, so very hands-on, all about the adventures, all about having some fun is probably how I would describe it.
that's cool. And you're so right. There is that expectation that mums shoulder most of the responsibility of parenthood, particularly in the early years. I find people say things like when dad's looking after the kids, it's like, but dad is babysitting. And it's like, it's not babysitting, it's just fatherhood.
Yeah,
It's,
that's a real gripe in our house when we hear
yeah,
when someone asks the mum where the kids are. It's like, oh, dad's babysitting. Yeah, exactly how you said it. No, it's not babysitting. You're their father. Like
yeah,
you're as much responsible. You know, if one of you wants to go on a night out, it's not assumed the dad can go, but the mum needs to ask permission. It's like you both work out together. You've both got as much right to
yeah,
have a break than each other. And obviously, there's biological reasons where the mum has to do more, but there's also like
sure,
tons of stuff you can do.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and more so as they get older. I think especially once we had Jessie, Fliss just became a bit more. I would do a bit more with her because Debs would need to be, feeding and all those types of biological things that she needs to do with Jessie, which
Mm.
just meant there was even more to do with Fliss, and kind of like Fliss became a bit more of my responsibility, I guess. So yeah, there's definitely a lot more of that when you've got two. But yeah, honestly, it just felt the most natural thing for it to be as split as possible. And that's not necessarily how I grew up. Like, I've got an incredible dad, and we have a fantastic relationship, and he was awesome. We've done some great things, but that's not necessarily like how he did it. Which I don't knock. Like, they are great parents, and I model everything off them, and they're brilliant. But I guess I've taken the things I really enjoyed about him, which was like the adventurous side, the like attempt anything, get stuck in, get dirty, like, I guess the adventurous side. But yeah, I just always had this just like feeling that was as responsible as Debs for this. So
Yeah.
why wouldn't it be 50-50?
I think there's definitely been a generational shift in the last or two generations, and it doesn't always follow that way. It's not like all grandparents, the dad didn't get as involved. I'm sure there were many that did, and as you say, great parents, even if the involvement looked slightly different. I know for us, when we first had kids, I remember grandparents looking in and kind of a little bit surprised at how hands-on James was with our kids, and it was like,
Yeah,
why wouldn't he be? Like, we didn't ever assume anything different.
I think I still see a few reasons why dads can be a bit more hesitant. I think there's a nervousness, and because it is new. You're right. Like, it's this generation where we're starting to see it more and more, and so I think people maybe don't necessarily have the example to follow. So there's a bit of a nervousness there. I think Debs gave me permission to be really hands-on, which maybe sounds like a funny thing to say, but she could have been really possessive over the children, especially when they're really young, because obviously she's really attached. But actually there was probably times where she had to let go a little bit to enable me to take them off. Like, I remember at a young age just wanting to give Debs a bit of a rest. So Fliss might have been a couple of months, and we would just go out for long walks. I'll walk for like 2 or 3 hours. And some mums were like, "Oh, I'm a bit uncomfortable about them being away from me for that long." But Debs was really good at giving me that permission and that flexibility to do that, and that really helped as well. Yeah, definitely, that really helped.
And I guess there's also been a shift in recent years, and again, it wasn't always the case with everyone, but a long time, like when I was a child, most parents, mum often stayed at home and didn't return to work after having children for a few years at least. And these days, things like that are much more balanced, and there's much more of a shared. Not always. Doesn't some people might choose to do things differently, but women having permission to have, like Debs has got a great career. She takes her career seriously. She doesn't have to choose between the two.
Yeah, I think we always knew that. This is kind of Deb's story, so I won't go too much into it. But like, she's always felt a real calling in the workplace. So she only took, I think, like 7 months maternity leave, and then 6 months with Jessie, because she felt really cool to be in the workplace. Like, she feels she's placed there for a reason.
Yeah.
And so she was always going to go back to work. Where other mums may be called to be more of a mother figure.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's different. I guess the whole, like, women going back to full-time work is becoming more popular for many reasons, like some financials, practical, all the rest of it. But yeah, I guess this is kind of the first time we're seeing it on a larger scale in this generation. Like, I'm knowing more and more people whose mums who are working. But
yeah, it's just good to have the choice, whereas maybe there wasn't the choice.
Yeah, definitely.
You choose, it's right for you and your family and your situation, but as you say, for some people it might not be out of choice, it might be out of necessity for financial reasons. But yeah, it's maybe different than it once was, and exactly the same way. But that leads me on to talking to you about an experience you've had recently. You took shared parental leave together. Tell us a little bit about that, because I'm sure you were probably in the minority of people that I know that have done that. So tell us about that, what that looked like, how that experience was for you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to where the original idea came from. I think I knew one or two dads who had done it for different lengths of time.
So explain what it is firstly for anyone that's listening that doesn't know.
Yeah, so shared parental leave is where the dad can use some of the parental leave, the maternity leave. Well, I've got to get the terminology right. The maternity leave that the mum gets.
Parental leave.
But yeah, so what it would mean. So I can't remember. Say they get 51 weeks of the year pay, statutory pay, the dad can use up an amount of those himself, so you can share them between the two. It's a bit of like when you speak to your HR department where you work, it's a bit of a nightmare for them all because it's quite complicated. But yeah, it effectively means you can take some parental leave. So I took 4 weeks. I know people who have taken like several months, and some that have just taken like an extra week. So what we did is we did it at the 6-month mark. So when our second child Jessie was 6 months, I started 4 weeks off. And what I think the original motivation is, it meant Debs could go back to work and not worry, and I could look after Jessie. Our kids do go, well, Fliss goes into a nursery, and Jessie would have gone into a nursery pre kind of lockdown. But it was just I think the original idea was just to help that transition, that she'd go back to work, I could look after the kids, and then as like phase 1, and then phase 2 would be us then both being off. So I had all these big elaborate plans of like days out, going to the beach, going on adventures, seeing people, and all that stuff, because I had this planned like October last year, and then obviously went into lockdown, and it ended up being nothing like what I'd planned for. Like I had all these lofty ideas, and then so I took it in the month of May. So that is when we were like 6 weeks into lockdown, and it ended up being very different, but good, but different to how I was expecting. It probably ended up being much more intimate time with them, because at the time lockdown was really tight, so you really couldn't really go out. Like it was in that time of the whole, like, you can go out for one form of exercise for 1 hour. But what it meant is that I realised that I quite often use activities like going to a trampoline park or going around a friend's house as like just a really good way to pass the time. As in, you can go to those things, the kids love it, and it passes like 2 hours. But because you couldn't do those things, I think the time together became a lot more intimate, because you really were together for like 8 or 9 hours in a row, living out every minute of it, finding games in the house, in the garden. So it was different, but I think it ended up it was more intimate time with them. It was really hard at times. Like, you've come from this, it's quite a shock. You've come from like a fast-paced work, and suddenly you're at home. And not that home isn't fast-paced, like, but it's just very different. Suddenly you're locked in the house with 2 young people to look after. It's just a very like different experience, different way of using your brain, all those things. So that took a while to get used to. What else did I really learn from it? Just a confidence, particularly with Jesse, because he was young, and I feel like as a dad sometimes there's this thing you have to push through, where like, I think because the mum is generally doing all the settling of them when they're going for sleeps and stuff, because it's usually just after they fed, so it kind of naturally falls to them. Because Deb was at work, she basically like fed and then gave him back to me. I then had to learn the techniques of like how to put them to sleep, how to get them, how to soothe them, and that situation like forced me into learning those things. So actually, I went in just before the parental leave, probably not being that confident at, if you passed me a fed baby, could I get it off to sleep? I probably hadn't done that much of it, but this forced me to learn those things and get confident with those things. And that's carried on to where we are now, is that I probably wouldn't be as confident with him if it wasn't for that time. But you have to really throw yourself into it, because it is a shock. And you can't really do it unless you really want to do it. Like, you do have to really want to do it, otherwise it'll be a real struggle. But I'm so glad I did. And I probably got a bit of advice from a few older dads who are like, it might be really tough when you're doing it, but like, when you look back in 15 years, you can think of that time you had them all to yourself for that period of time at that really cool young age. So
what a gift. You don't get that chance for that kind of leave when that window's passed, do you? So
especially not for a length of time. Like, 4 weeks is longer than like a holiday you're likely to go on. It's probably double the length of the longest holiday you're going to go on. Most people wouldn't go for longer than 2 weeks. So I did 4, but I know people who have done like several months, like 3 months.
How did it compare for you? I know you as a colleague and as a friend, you are someone with a very strong work ethic. You don't stop. How did that compare? Because what I don't want people to ever think, we know as parents that working inside the home and outside of the home, and I mean that metaphorically because most of us are working inside the home with
Yeah.
roles and hats on at the moment. But yeah, how do you find that you go from like working really, really hard and all the time in your Kerith role, and obviously still it being hard work, but good hard work at home with the children as well? Were there any things you could take from one world into the other?
Or not really. I'll be honest and say, not that I ever thought being like a stay-at-home mum or dad was easy. I certainly didn't think that, but I really got an appreciation for just how difficult it can be.
Yeah.
And it can be really tough. And I don't know how some people do it for like a year. But I guess some people are just wired a bit differently. But yeah, I certainly wouldn't underplay it. That is hard work looking after
Yeah.
kids. It's definitely not easier than doing my job. It's just very different. I can't think of anything that particularly crossed over. I guess I've got quite a creative role in production, and you definitely need a lot of creativity with kids, especially in a lockdown where you're just trying to keep ways to keep them entertained and not have them sitting in front of Disney Plus for 4 weeks. Um,
Guilty.
but I think probably what I did probably take is I'm quite good at getting into rhythms at work. It's probably the only way we really survive, and it's probably a bit of a control thing. That when we get into a good rhythm, things get a bit easier, things get better, things improve. So, and that's a bit of the culture we've got at Kerith is getting into rhythms. And I definitely tried to carry that across, like in terms of how we did our days. So not it's that balance between waking up every day and having no plan, and that sounding like a really cool free thing, but that's actually really tiring for every day to try and come up with something unique, something different, have no plan. And actually what we found is just having like a couple of markers. So what we would do is, for example, like in the morning after breakfast, we would always go out somewhere. So we wouldn't necessarily have to go to the same place, but like that was the time to go out somewhere. Then we'd come home, have lunch. After lunch, we'd watch a program on TV, and then it would be like board game. But just like not like structuring the day down like you're at school, but just like having these few different markers in the day just helped. I mean, your brain wasn't constantly working on like what's next.
Yeah.
So that is definitely a skill that I've learned at work that I carry into kind of how we might spend a weekend or how we got through the paternity leave.
And I guess you're juggling a lot of balls in your Kerith role, and looking after two little children can feel like that sometimes as well. Like you can have your rough plan, but they throw a curveball, don't they, every once in a while? And I don't know,
Yeah.
there's
So
a baby explosion or a toddler tantrum, or they don't always play in the way that they're going to play. Children.
yeah, I feel like I'm always in this rotation at the moment, which is like if I'm working at home, it's look at laptop screen, look at child one, look at child two, look at laptop screen, and just keep bouncing between the three, trying to keep all three. If each one was a ball, just trying to keep each one up in the air and not eating the random bit of plastic off the floor or treading over the other child. So yeah, and on my word, multitasking is tiring. And I think even more so when you're trying to multitask childcare. I think there's one thing multitasking in childcare. So I would say you have 3 kids and you're trying to keep it all happy. But if you swap out like one of the kids for them work, because then you're juggling 3 different things, but like your work and your children are quite different. So like your brain then even have to stretch even further into like separating what's in the work pile and what is in the home child pile.
Yeah, I used to find I was often pre-lockdown racing from school run to office, from office to school run, but that 25 minutes in the car would be kind of a little bit of a decompression chamber, or like, right, really try hard. And it didn't always work, but really try hard to kind of park that stuff. So I'm turning up with a smile to pick them up. But I'm finding that working from home, you don't have that same, even if it's a 5-minute cycle home from work, you just don't have that same journey from office space in your house to the next room to see your kids. How are you finding the working from home and dadding it at the same time, juggle, because both you and Debbie are now Debs. I don't know why I called her Debbie.
Oh, you'll be in trouble.
We'll edit that out. Don't listen to that bit, Debs. Yeah, how are you both? Because you're both working now. How are you finding the juggle?
Yeah, we're learning a lot as we go. It's really hard, as it is for everyone I talk to. So
Yeah.
even more, probably more so, Debs is working full time from home, so she's not going in at all.
Mhm.
And then I'm also working full time, but I need to go into my office, which is our church building, because there's certain jobs that have to be done there. Filming projects, technical tasks, all that type of stuff. So that is the tricky balance, is like that communication of like balancing what I need to get done, but some of it has to be done out of the house. But if I'm out of the house, that means she's then responsible for the kids, and Fliss is in nursery for 3 days a week, so that gets a bit easier. Yeah, we're learning lots. Like we've fallen out over it and not communicated properly. And I think the lesson we're learning at the moment is like just that communication is key, and having real respect for each other's jobs. Because sometimes you can get so wrapped up in your own, thinking, oh, I've got this deadline, I need to get this done. The other one's just going to have to look after the kids, but then the other one's going, your partner's going through that same thing as well.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly having to make sure I'm not just being really self-centered about like, what I'm booking in, because this isn't how we would. I mean, if we weren't in a lockdown, actually both kids would be in a nursery, and like a grandparent would be having them for one day. Like we were always going to both work full time. It's just there was other childcare that was going to be available, which isn't currently available.
Yeah.
Which is why we're in this like juggling position. But yeah, it's really hard, and we are learning all the time, and I think we're getting better, and we're definitely learning that it's like communicate, and just try and have each other's backs as well. Be prepared for the plan to go out the window if one of your work projects goes up in smoke, and then like you need to change your plan. But yeah, we are definitely learning to have a lot of grace for each other, and yeah, great for our communication skills. We are learning a lot.
Yeah. And it's just remembering through all that you're a team. Your husband and wife are a team.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There's a real temptation for us to. I know we've had moments where there is my stuff's more important or urgent right now than your stuff, and actually remembering we're a team, we're in this together, and treating each other as well as we would with one of our colleagues in our separate organisations that we work for.
Yeah.
Because you communicate with your colleagues, with your team. You like ahead. Well, what are you up to this week? You look ahead. You plan. You use planning tools, different things, and it's actually having to learn that whilst we're at the moment both working under the same roof, but for different organisations, we're kind of part of the same organisation in our family unit.
Yeah.
Treating
And I think
each other well.
I think also realizing that actually a lot of other people have got grace for you as well.
Yeah.
In that it's not just your family that's in this situation. I think sometimes I can think, well, almost like we've got ourselves into this situation where we haven't got all the childcare we need and we're having to do this. But like, then you look around your workplace, no matter where you work, you'll have colleagues who are equally in difficult positions, and yeah, we're all in it together. I think I'm trying to remind myself of that as well, is that I need to have a lot of grace for other people who are going through this. Sometimes I can be like, why is this not getting done? And it's because they've got the same issues I've got at home. So yeah, we're all in it together. I'm definitely trying to remember that.
And hopefully that this has shone a spotlight on that juggle for parents, the work. If you work for outside of the home as well as within the home, there's that hopefully shone a spotlight on it, and employers have become more compassionate to those issues. Colleagues to one another become more compassionate. I mean, it's not just about those of us who've got kids. People could have elderly parents or other stuff going on in their lives, which means that we're just got to have more grace for one another.
Yeah, definitely.
We rang HSBC to speak to them, and on their kind of automated message it says, please bear in mind many of our staff are working from home, so you may hear noises in the background, children, etc. And I thought, that's so great, like a global organisation like those, and there other banks are available to any listener. But yeah, it's just so great that large organisations are recognising, people have families. People are not just the person that turns up to work in their office. They are multi-layered different people and have a life outside of those working hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've nearly come to the end of our time together. It's gone quickly, Callum.
That's very quick.
If you could answer me one last question that I like to ask everybody when they come along. As you know, this is called Are We Nearly There Yet? And I don't know if Fliss has got to that age yet where you're on a car journey and she's asked you, are we nearly there yet? But trust me, it's coming. Nearly every parent's probably heard that answer, or will hear that question, and will hear that question at some point in their journey with kids. But as parents, we're the ones on the journey. And when we're going on a journey, we take stuff with us, whether that's like a suitcase, if we're going on an airplane, just packing stuff like baby wipes in the glove compartment, whatever it is. Thinking about your essential items on your journey as a parent so far. If you could go back to the start again, what essential items would you pack for your journey as a parent? And that can be fun stuff, it can be serious stuff.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I always make sure we've got is ample snacks, not only for myself but also for the children.
Yeah.
They are the ultimate bribe product. The amount of times I've whispered in my daughter's ear, if you just do this one thing for me, you can have this. Works every time. But also good snacks for me. We all get hungry, and yeah, always make sure you've got a little something for you to perk you up. I actually texted this question to you. Did give me a heads up about this, and I texted it to my wife today, and she came up with a great one. She said, I think you would take a map, because you'd use the map to get to where you want to go, because you know where you want to go, but you're also not afraid to take a load of detours on the way. And she said that kind of summed up what she thought my parenting style was like. So you know where you want to get to with them, or what the end of the day will look like, but you'll happily take any route on offer to get yourself there. So that was her suggestion. I thought another funny one could be definitely a first aid kit. I don't know whether it's my daughter's clumsiness or my lack of regard to safety, but she does seem to pick up lots of scratches, bangs, bruises under my care. I think it's just because of all the adventures we go on, and adventures, sometimes the byproduct is a couple of plasters are needed. So yeah, we'd have that.
I think like raised knees and dirty feet are the sign of a good day for a child.
Absolutely. And then just the last one, I just wanted to shoehorn this in, and that was in my suitcase I would take a bit of advice, which is one thing that kind of we feel we've learned that has worked personally for us, and that is when you've got to make decisions about your children, small and big, you obviously want to make the best decision for them, but you also equally have to put in what the best decision for you is. So we have found repeatedly that when we've made decisions that are not only good for the children but are going to be positive for us, that means we become better parents, better people to around, and they become happier. I'm trying to think of a good example. I think, for example, one could be the fact that why we both work full time, and that's because we both feel a real calling to work full time. And that, some would argue maybe that's not the best decision for the kids. Like some would say kids need like their parent at home, but what it does mean is that when we are with them, that we feel we bring our best. And I think if one of us wasn't working full time, we wouldn't necessarily be able to bring our best, because we'd be resenting being at home with them, because that's not where we feel we should be. So yeah, I would just take a little bit of advice that definitely consider your own feelings and what's good for you in the conversation about when we're making decisions about the kids.
Contented parents pours into contented children.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me. It's been great.
Oh, you're welcome.
Second dad on the podcast.
Yeah. Shout out the dads.
Yeah.
The cake and biscuits were great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I wasn't aware that you had any cake or biscuits, but
Oh.
don't tell the others that we're recording this with. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Callum.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you to Callum for joining me on this week's podcast conversation. Wasn't it great to hear about that shared parental leave, that opportunity he had to spend that intensive, intimate time with his children, and how he just chases having fun with them and chases having great experiences and just always wants to be such a hands-on dad with them. I thought I'd take this opportunity to let any dads out there know about our Who Let the Dads Out group. It's a group that meets usually once a month on a Saturday morning. It's for dads, grandparents, carers, male carers, particularly of preschool-aged children, that meets once a month on a Saturday morning at the Kerith Centre in Bracknell. At the moment they're not meeting in person, but you can check out their Facebook group, Who Let the Dads Out Bracknell. Go and have a look and maybe join in some of the live events they're doing on Facebook. Take care, have a great week, and come back and join us for the next conversation on Are We Nearly There Yet?